Hi everyone, my name is Erica Colangelo and I'm your registered dietitian. Today we're going to be going over the CACFP training. So if you'll just bear with me, I'm going to close me out and I'm going to go ahead and get the PowerPoint going. So just a little recap with COVID-19. I know there was changes to meal service, that family style meals were put on hold. And meals needed to be pre-plated and distributed to the children, which I think many of you are still doing since COVID is still affecting us 2 years later. The full amount of food listed on the menu must be served to each child, which I know many of you are good at putting the serving size and the amount you're going to be giving for each child each day. Even though COVID-19 has affected us, teachers still should eat with children, even if it's socially distanced, and be participating in any of the meal services. This is important in order to continue to model good eating habits and also showing them to try new things. It may be challenging to get children to eat when there's so much food on their plate since we're not doing family style anymore. However, again, modeling this behavior, having them try little bites of each thing that's on their plate before being able to get up from the table. So CDC guidelines for food preparation and meal service, just some key points to remember is that meals are typically served family style, plate each child's meal and serve it. However, now we know we're doing it a little bit differently. As far as food preparation, you want to make sure that it is not done by the same staff that is diapering children. This is important just for contaminating the food, and also, we would want everyone to be safe and washing hands. Sinks used for food preparation should not be used for any other purpose. So again, if you have any type of food preparation area going on, you want a separate sink, a separate area from any of the other things that are going on in this center. You want a separate hand washing sink and then a separate food preparation sink. Caregivers should ensure that children wash their hands prior to and immediately after eating, and showing them also to be doing this after, after going to the bathroom or after playing outside. Another thing that you guys as caregivers are great about doing is washing your hand before preparing food and after. Even if you're just serving, helping the child with meal service, you want to be sure that you're washing your hands. Any bottles, bottle caps, nipples, any equipment used for bottling our infants should be thoroughly cleaned after each use. A dishwasher is great. If your facility has one, make sure you use that. If not, you can do soap and water and use a bottle brush to make sure you're cleaning, well inside the bottle. You'll then want to go ahead and have a clean surface where you'll be able to either have a bottle rack for drying or a nice clean surface so that everything can air dry. So if your center has to close, which hopefully at this point we won't have to do this as often, but there still could be times when you may need to do this due to rising in COVID, you can participate by doing grab and go meals. And again, the big thing to remember here is that all components should be included in the meal just like you would normally do at your site. These meals do not need to be eaten on the premises. And of course, if it's a weekend, you're able to then go ahead and send, multiple meals home for multiple days for these children. Since we know that sometimes this is their, 1, 2, or maybe 3 meals they'll get during the day, it will be helpful for them to have some for the weekend as well. So now we're just going to watch a quick video by the CACFP.
Many children lack consistent access to enough food for an active, healthy lifestyle. Federal child nutrition programs exist to help fill the gap. One of these programs is the Child and Adult Care Food Program, or CACFP, which provides healthy meals and snacks to children and adults. The healthy meals and snacks served at CACFP sites help young children to build healthy habits to last a lifetime and assist adult daycare participants in maintaining their health and wellness. Let's review the who, what, when, and where of the CACFP so you can make sure families in your community benefit from this valuable program. Children 18 and under, chronically impaired disabled persons age 18 and over, and older adults age 60 and over. What? Healthy meals and snacks. When? Meals are served year-round in participating child and adult care programs and emergency shelters and during the academic school year for at-risk after-school programs. Where? Eligible sites include licensed child care centers, after-school programs, emergency shelters providing residential and food services to homeless children, family child care homes, and approved adult day centers. Together, let's improve the health of infants, children, and adult daycare participants by serving nutritious meals and snacks to promote healthy eating habits. If you have questions or want to learn more about the CACFP, visit the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction CACFP website.
All right, so let's get started. What we're going to discuss today is My Plate, meal pattern requirements and portion sizes for our children, family style meal service, food safety, food allergies, and civil rights. So I do have a couple more videos in here that you guys will see throughout the presentation. So you guys are probably familiar with Choose My Plate, and this is great icon to help show the benefit to eating healthy and just how important it is to eating healthy over time. A lot of their slogans are great, like bite, 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 or small changes matter. And really this demonstrates just what a balanced plate should look like at every meal that we're going to be serving to our children. So we're just going to dive in a little more and kind of look at each part of this plate and look at some of the information for each section. So first we'll start with fruit. So any fruit or 100% fruit juice counts as part of the fruit group. And we know that a lot of times most people, especially little children, love sweets. So usually fruit is not too hard of an issue to get into the child's diet. Half of the plate is fruit and vegetables. Fruits provide vitamins and minerals, fiber, and it's great because they're not a lot of calories. Canned fruit must be drained, and that's because as it's kind of soaking in there, it is absorbing and creating a lot of extra sugar we wouldn't need in our canned fruit. Also required is that juice is only served once per day, since really juice doesn't contain any fiber and it really has extra calories that these kiddos don't need. Dried fruit is really not recommended. We know occasionally we might have this, but it is very sticky. It can stick to teeth. It also contains a lot more sugar. So when we can, we like to stick with our whole fruits or 100% fruit juice. So really the key message here is to try to make half your plate fruits and vegetables. Moving on to vegetables, we know that any vegetable or a vegetable juice that's in 100% is a member of this group. Vegetables may be raw, they can be cooked. We can definitely use fresh, frozen, or canned vegetables. We know with our canned vegetables, sometimes they do contain lots of sodium. So these we sometimes prefer to be drained or even washed as well. A good key tip is, if able to kind of look at when purchasing the cans that you may buy to see if some of them are less than 140 milligrams of sodium. And that would be just something beneficial if you're able to do that. Vegetables are a little harder since children don't particularly love some of the taste of vegetables since they're not as sweet as our fruits. But it's great to get creative with them, adding herbs, putting them in soups. If you can try to incorporate them in most of the meals, also showing that you're trying them, you're enjoying them. I know it can be tricky because they can't have all vegetables to be raw, but sometimes that also is helpful. And if we're able to put salad on the menu, we do just want to remember that we do a double portion on the menu. And this is because salad does contain a lot of water. So, for example, if the serving size is a 1/4 cup of salad, it should say a 1/2 cup, since the lettuce, again, contains mostly water. We want to remember too with the vegetables that, of course, there's some that are choking hazards, so you want to be sure they're cut if they're going to be served raw. We can use dressings to help increase calories, but since they do that, it's important, instead of trying something like a ranch, you might want to try something like a tzatziki or a Greek yogurt dip for them to use. Even salsa would be great, or even hummus would be nice to dip with our vegetables. So those things are just another suggestions that you guys can add into your meals. Now moving into protein, we know we have about 1 ounce for toddlers and 1.5 ounces for our preschool kiddos. In this section, we call this the meat and meat alternative, or MMA, which includes all these things listed here: meat, poultry, seafood, beans, peas, eggs, any soy products, and of course our nuts and seeds. You want to remember in this group that you will need, a lot of times these things, like for example a meatball, may not particularly match up to the amount we need to give our child. So you do want to look for that CN label. This will help to kind of outline what's in the product and what that, say, meatball contains. So if you have 5 meatballs, this CN label will help you to say, okay, 5 meatballs equals 1.5 ounces of meat. So that would be okay for our preschool child. Another thing that might come through here too is our pizza. So you also want to know, okay, if I serve pizza, what does this contain? And again, this is important by using the CN label. It might say 2 grains, and it will be 2 ounce meat or meat alternative if I serve this size of pizza. If you can't get that information, you'll want to look for the product formulation statement, or PFS, and you can do this by writing to the manufacturer. An example of this would be something like sliced turkey at lunch, if you would like to serve that. 1.5 ounces for us to serve to the child, but this may actually be like 3 ounces of turkey or 3 slices of turkey, which if you kind of think about it, that seems like a lot. So you might want to incorporate this with a different way. Maybe you'll do 1 slice of turkey and then some cheese, so that you can then meet the 1.5 ounce requirement for our preschool children. Another thing in here that I was thinking of too is mac and cheese or sauces. You want to make sure you're analyzing your recipes and that they have an adequate amount of your meat or meat alternative when you're serving these to the children. And just one more thing here about protein too is yogurt, which can be counted in this group. But you do want to remember that the yogurt does have a strict limit for how much sugar. So in 6 ounces of yogurt, you don't want more than 23 grams of sugar. And I'm going to go more into the CN label, but I just know a lot of times that's used in this area, so I just wanted to bring that up. And grains, we have a lot going on. There was some new stuff this past year that they had moved from our normal sizes to now calling them ounce equivalents. So I have a couple slides that will kind of go over what that means. And I know there's great resources on the website for you guys as well. Or if you can't find them, please reach out because I could definitely share those with you. So one important thing here we'll kind of go over first is infants. So infants can have iron fortified cereal or a meat alternative. They need about ½ ounce equivalent. Iron fortified infant cereal is the only grain that may count toward a reimbursable breakfast, lunch, or supper in the CACFP infant meal pattern. So just keep that in mind. You can serve infants bread or bread-like items or crackers or iron fortified infant cereal or ready-to-eat cereal as part of a reimbursable snack. So the only thing that will count towards the meals is the iron fortified cereal, but you can use some other items and those can count towards a snack. For our 1 to 5 year olds at breakfast, lunch, and supper and snack, they need a ½ ounce equivalent. And I will share some examples of like what this would be with you for our 1 to 5 year olds. So an example of a ½ ounce equivalent for our 1 to 5 year olds would be a 1/4 cup of cooked pasta. Or this could be something like cereal, but there is different criteria. So if the cereal is flakes or rounds, it would be a ½ cup. But if it's granola, it would be more like an 1/8 of a cup. Another thing to serve to them too, like crackers or graham crackers, there's different criteria about how large the cracker should be. So for example, a saltine cracker, it needs to be about 2 by 2 to equal our equivalent. Whereas like a graham cracker, it might be about 5 by 2.5. Or they even say like 1 cracker is 14 grams. So there's a nice big list on the CACFP website of some resources and showing, graham cracker equals this much to make a ½ ounce equivalent. Another example is like a waffle, it needs to be at least 34 grams. So this might be a half of a waffle is 17 grams, so you can serve then maybe a whole waffle. So these are just other examples. You do, in this group, want to remember, and this is probably the biggest thing, which I should have said first, is that at least 1 serving of grains must be whole grain, which is really best practice. So we really should be serving at least once in our day, but we should also really be thinking about serving this or suggesting to serve this more often if possible, because really there's no harm in serving whole grains. It gets the kids used to the taste, it provides more nutrients and more minerals for them. And if they're seeing you eating this multiple times a day, it's again going to help improve their eating habits at home. So again, there's lots of resources on the CACFP website. So if you guys want more information, please reach out. So we're going to dive into the whole grains a bit more. And we're going to go ahead and start with the whole grain rich requirement for CACFP. So I know many of you know that CACFP grains must be served at least at 1 snack or meal every day, must be whole grain rich. So whole grain rich means that at least half of the grain ingredients are whole grain. and the remaining grain ingredients are enriched. So we're going to kind of dive more into this, but just starting with the basics there. Now, this only applies to children and adult programs for CACFP. You're not required to serve infants whole grain rich foods, but you are welcome to serve them to infants as well if this is something you would like. So whole grain ingredients have all parts of the grain that you see there in this picture, the anatomy of the grain. This means that nutrients that are naturally in the bran and germ are still in the food. When we say enriched, this means that the bran and the germ that you see in this diagram are removed during processing, and then they add back some vitamins and minerals in order to make it whole grain rich. So I just pulled this off the website, but I think this is great to kind of just show some different enriched grain ingredients that you might see when you're reading labels, to just also think about bran or germ ingredients, and then really, to keep a close eye on some of our non-credible grains or flours that we can't use because otherwise we won't receive credit for them. So foods are whole grain rich in the CACFP if. And this is a great slide because this really helps you to identify which grains are whole grain rich. So we'll go over after this how to also kind of do this on our own. But if you know that the food is listed as a whole grain or on any state WIC authorized food list, you can use this as whole grain rich. If it is listed as whole wheat, meaning it has the entire wheat or gram, certain foods only, then that's another one. If the food has an FDA approved whole grain health claim on it, there's another choice. If the food meets the whole grain rich criteria for the school meal program, you have proper documentation from a manufacturer or a standardized recipe that shows the whole grains are the main ingredient by weight, and if the food meets criteria listed in the rule of 3. So all of these things will identify that the food is whole grain rich. And in the last one with the rule of 3, we're going to get into a little bit more and kind of just show you how to identify this yourself. So the rule of 3. First, you want to look at the first ingredient. So is it a whole grain? Then you want to look at the second ingredient and see what it contains. Is this another whole grain? Is it enriched? Is it a bran or germ? And then you want to look at the third ingredient and identify the same things. Is it whole grain? Is it enriched? Is it a bran or a germ? If the food does not meet this criteria, you will need to use another method to see if your food is whole grain rich, which you could go back to those couple methods I had showed you in order to identify if it's whole grain rich. If the grain only is covered by one ingredient, then it is a whole grain. So you really don't have to go and dig and look for, okay, does it have more? Is there more ingredients that I need to see before I can identify if it's whole grain rich? So something like this pasta here and these crackers, you can see there's no other, whole grain identifier or ingredient in these products. So you can stop right with one and it says whole grain, so you know that this product is whole grain rich. So now we're going to move on to just identifying whole grain rich foods for the CACFP using an ingredients list. And this is more for our combination foods, which would get a little bit trickier. So kind of putting that rule of 3 into practice here. So this first one is a pizza, which you could see. And now, other examples include a tortilla and a burrito, wild rice and chicken and wild rice soup. And of course, we're going to look at this crust pizza here. So you can see there's a huge long list of some of our ingredients, but you can see the first ingredient is whole wheat flour. You can see the second ingredient is enriched wheat flour, and the third is wheat bran. So does this crust meet our whole grain rich criteria? And the answer is yes. This pizza crust is considered whole grain rich because, as you can see here, the first grain ingredient is whole wheat, is whole grain. The second grain ingredient is enriched wheat flour. And the third ingredient in this crust is wheat bran, which is a type of bran. So this crust has met all 3 of our criteria to be considered whole grain rich. And so this is just a quick example, but whenever you are using any type of combination foods, you'll want to maybe keep this in mind as you're looking at the ingredient label to identify these items. And then our last My Plate little area here is dairy, which many of us want to encourage children to have dairy. It's great for their bones. It's great for them to grow. It provides a lot of great nutrients. And we know we usually serve low-fat milk. Fat-free is also acceptable. Of course, if they're younger than 2, we can be doing the whole milk. We do want to strive to do low fat though after that, and really look for even yogurts that contain low fat milk. Using lactose-free dairy is fine, and anything fortified soy versions are fine. Our milk group includes milk yogurt, cheese, lactose-free milk, and again, anything fortified soy milk and yogurts. It does not include foods made from milk that have little calcium or high fat content, such as cream cheese, sour cream, and butter. And in this group, you do want to remember that we'll kind of go over more, but if there's any different milks that want to be used in this area, we do need to have proof of that for any type of allergies to be able to serve different types of milk. Otherwise, our only options is, of course, dairy milk and soy. So I told you I was going to talk about this a little bit more, and just to get a little bit more in depth with what the child nutrition label is helpful to help us to identify what is in the food and how much of the food we need to serve. So there's quite a bit of things on this slide, but the gist of it is really looking for this label when you're buying products like something like a drumstick or a meatball or anything that might be not only contain one ingredient. So these labels are great to identify. The information that appears on the CN label is the CN logo, which is a distinct border. So if you haven't seen one before, you'll really, want to look for this. The meal pattern contribution statement, you'll see a 6-digit product code or identifier. You'll see that the USDA and FNS authorization, and you'll see the month and year of approval on this label. Remember, you do want to have CN documentation, so you want to potentially cut out these labels and store them, or if you have some type of binder. So any type of food that you're serving, you want to make sure you have this packaging somewhere saved. So then if anyone were to come, you were able to show that. You could even take photos of that or photocopy this packaging so that you're able to keep track of that. So it's important for documentation that foods that have a standardized recipe are documented. So you want to make sure, like I mentioned already, if you don't have this label, that you can also use the product formulation statement showing that, this is a whole grain this is the primary ingredient in this product. So you can store those again and keep them for any type of regulation, or if someone were to come to ask you about your recipes. So that is important. So now I know you guys know the CACFP meal patterns, but I just wanted to point out some different examples at breakfast, at lunch, supper, and then of course at snack. So in example 3, you can serve that meat or meat alternative up to 3 times per week if you'd like. It's great if you could incorporate a second vegetable at lunch and supper in place of fruit. However, we all know that can be challenging, but that's something to strive for or to do occasionally. Snacks, again, any of these combinations is fine for the meal pattern, is approved. I think a great tip here is to kind of try to create, local seasonal fruit and veggie lists that would then be able to help you in planning your snacks or your meal time, so that okay, it's in season right now are apples, so I might want to serve those. Or when it's warmer, we might be looking at something like berries to serve. So again, it's just a little tip, but it's always great to kind of create maybe a seasonal list that will help you to create your meal patterns. So a little recap before we continue. So a summary here is that all milk is unflavored. You must serve 1 whole grain or whole grain rich food each day. And on the menu, it should be designated as WGR. Juice may not be served more than 1 time per day. Canned fruit must be drained or it will count as a juice. So again, remember, if you're using canned fruit, to drain your fruit. Water must be available. However, it may not be on the table if milk and juice are being served, but to have water at any point around is fine. Yogurt may not have more than 23 grams of sugar for a 6-ounce serving. So that's kind of a key when you're serving yogurt or looking at the back of the label on your yogurts you're purchasing. Also, cereal may not have more than 6 grams of sugar per 1-ounce serving. That's another thing, a key component to look for. Grain-based desserts are not allowed except for graham crackers, animal crackers, and muffins. So if it's something like a fig bar, a fig Newton, you are not able to do that or will not be credible. Documentation is, again, very, very important. So you want to make sure you have your child nutrition label or your product formulation statement for all your processed food saved somewhere safe. So if you do get cited, you have all that information. And all grains and processed foods must be labeled and creating worksheets done on them. So crediting worksheets done on them. So you do want to make sure that you have all of those labels there and the crediting worksheets. So here's just a little example for breakfast and kind of just getting more in depth on the portion size and some, ideas for your breakfast, which you may already be doing. But we know that our milk is unflavored and we're usually serving 4-ounce regular or low fat for our toddlers and 6-ounce low fat for our preschoolers. Grains, we want that 1/2 ounce equivalent, which I kind of already spoke about, but here is more examples that you'll see. Protein may be substituted for a grain up to 3 times a week. You want to make sure you're doing a 1/2 ounce of protein, egg, or cheese, and about 2 ounces of yogurt. Fruit or vegetables, all canned fruit must be drained. I can't stress this enough. A 1/4 cup for the toddlers and a 1/2 cup for our preschoolers. As for lunch, again, you should be having an unflavored milk At grains, the ½ ounce equivalent at lunch. Our protein, we want the toddlers will get 1 ounce, our preschoolers will get 1½ ounces. These could be a variety of different meats, eggs. You can do beans if you'd like as well to count as a protein. Vegetables, 1/8 cup for our toddlers, a 1/4 cup for our preschoolers. Lettuce or salad, a 1/4 cup for our toddlers and a 1/2 cup for our preschoolers. And as for fruit, 1/8 cup for our toddlers and a 1/4 cup for our preschool. Canned fruits, again, must be drained. And I just like these pictures here. I think these are great, just showing like a balanced plate and kind of what you ideally could be serving at lunchtime. And now for our snack, we can choose any 2 components. All ages will get the same size snack. Again, our milk is usually always unflavored. We have different grains that we can serve at snack time. We can do protein, a cheese stick, hummus. We can serve fruit at snack time. I love the picture here of it looks like a waffle with peanut butter and banana. Those are all good components to a snack and healthy options. You could do veggies like you see here and maybe adding that hummus or that tzatziki sauce. So now I have 2 videos that I love you guys to watch on the meal patterns. So just to get a little bit more in depth.
Child and Adult Care Food Program, or CACFP, meal pattern provides opportunities to help kids get the nutrition they need to learn, grow, and play. In this video, we will take a look at the CACFP meal pattern for 1 through 18-year-olds to make sure you are informed of the requirements for the CACFP. Meal patterns make sure that meals and snacks served include a variety of vegetables and fruits, whole grains, and less added sugar and saturated fats. Woo woo, yeah, party. This means higher quality meals served in the CACFP will help young children learn healthy eating habits early. As part of the CACFP guidelines, you'll notice that vegetables and fruits are 2 separate components for lunch, supper, and snack. Also, a serving of 100% juice can be served up to 1 time per day. Why? Juices are low in dietary fiber and higher in calories than the whole fruit or vegetable they are made from. We encourage you to serve more whole foods. Let's talk grains. 1 serving a day of grains is to be a whole grain, or whole grain rich. And to help reduce sugar, grain-based desserts cannot be served as the grain component. Grain-based desserts are a source of added sugar and saturated fat and include items such as brownies, cakes, cookies, granola bars, cereal bars, pastries, donuts, cinnamon rolls, and other sweet treats. There are also other guidelines to help reduce sugar. Yogurt needs to have 23 grams of sugar or less for a 6-ounce serving. Breakfast cereals need to have 6 grams of sugar or less per dry ounce. And milk for children ages 1 through 5 must be unflavored milk. And finally, to help promote the health of participants, foods cannot be deep fried on site. Instead, use the following cooking methods: bake, broil, saute, stir fry, and microwave. All right, so let's check out the meal patterns. A meal pattern is a guide to help you build healthy, well-balanced meals and snacks. The meal pattern breaks down breakfast, lunch, supper, and snack into required food components, which come together to build balanced, nutritious meals to provide children with the energy and nutrients they need to learn and grow. Let's meet our 5 meal components. Milk provides carbohydrates, protein, and key nutrients like calcium, potassium, vitamin D, and A. Meat or meat alternate. Our bodies need protein to grow and mend. Protein is found in fish, beef and poultry, but also in vegetarian sources, such as eggs or dairy foods like cheese and yogurt. Vegan sources of protein include beans, other legumes, and tofu. Vegetables. Veggies taste great and are nutrition rock stars. Vegetables are typically low in calories, but high in dietary fiber and key nutrients children need to learn and grow, such as folate, magnesium, potassium, and vitamins A and C. Fruits, like vegetables, are also nutrition rock stars. They provide key nutrients and are naturally sweet to eat. Did you know that there are over 200 varieties of fruits and vegetables? That's over 200 different flavors, textures, colors, and forms to try. Grains, such as wheat, rice, oatmeal, barley, and cornmeal, provide dietary fiber, B vitamins, and minerals. Together, these fill you up, prevent heart disease, keep you regular, and fuel your metabolism. Let's break the screen into 3 parts to differentiate the CACFP meal patterns for the different age groups. On the left side, we will show the meal pattern for ages 1 and 2. In the middle section, we'll show the meal pattern for 3 to 5-year-olds. On the right side, we'll show the meal pattern for older children, ages 6 to 18. For 1 through 2-year-olds, the serving size for breakfast is a half cup of fluid milk, a quarter cup of vegetables, fruit, or portions of both, and a half-ounce equivalent of grains. Breakfast for 3 to 5-year-olds is 3/4 of a cup of milk, half a cup of vegetables, fruit, or portions of both, and a half-ounce equivalent of grains. Older children and teens 6 through 18 years old require 1 cup of milk, 1 half cup of vegetables, fruit, or portions of both, and 1 ounce equivalent of grains. Want some menu planning flexibility at breakfast? You can substitute a meat or meat alternate for the entire grain component at breakfast up to 3 times a week. Now, let's move on to lunch and supper. Let's take a peek at what we need. 1 to 2-year-olds require a half a cup of milk, 1 ounce of meat or meat alternate, 1/8 cup of vegetables, 1/8 cup of fruits, and a half-ounce equivalent of grains. 3 to 5-year-olds require a 3/4 cup of milk, 1.5 ounces of meat or meat alternate, a 1/4 cup of vegetables, a 1/4 cup of fruit, and a half-ounce equivalent of grains. Children 6 through 18 years old require 1 cup of milk, 2 ounces of meat or meat alternate, and a half cup of vegetables, a 1/4 cup of fruit, and a 1 ounce equivalent of grains. Finally, let's see what we need for healthy snacks. Snack is a bit different. We only need to choose 2 different components, so you've got options. For 1 through 5-year-olds, the minimum serving sizes for snacks are the same. Remember, snacks can be made up from 2 components from the 5 components shown below: a half of a cup of milk, a half ounce of meat or meat alternate, a half cup of vegetables, a half cup of fruit, and a half ounce equivalent of grain. Snacks for children 6 and above are also made up from 2 components of the 5 components from the list below: 1 cup of milk, 1 ounce of meat or meat alternate, 3/4 cup of vegetables, 3/4 cup of fruit, and 1 ounce equivalent of grains. By serving healthy meals and snacks, we have a powerful opportunity to instill healthy habits in young children. If you have questions or want to learn more about the CACFP, visit the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction CACFP website.
So I hope you liked that. That was a little recap of kind of what I went over. And I think they do a nice job putting it easy and simple for you guys. So next we're going to go over one more video, and this is specific to the infant meal pattern for you guys to watch now.
In this short video, we are going to provide an overview of the Child and Adult Care Food Program, or CACFP, Meal Requirements for Infants, to make sure the little ones in our care get the nutrition they need. As a participant of the CACFP, all programs providing infant care must offer to supply iron-fortified infant formula and infant foods, including iron-fortified infant cereal and developmentally appropriate fruits, vegetables, grains, and meat to all enrolled infants. Programs must notify families in writing of the type of formula and infant foods offered. Families choose if they would like their infant to receive the program-supplied formula and foods, or if they would like to supply breast milk, formula, or foods. Families cannot be required to provide formula or foods. USDA encourages and supports breastfeeding. Programs may receive reimbursement for meals when a breastfeeding mother comes to the daycare center or home and directly breastfeeds her baby, or if expressed breast milk is fed to the baby at the program. Only breast milk and infant formula are required to be served to infants 0 through 5 months old. The CACFP infant meal pattern encourages delaying the introduction of solid food until the infant is 6 months. However, the age when solid foods are introduced will depend on the infant. Infants develop at different rates. Some infants are ready to consume solid foods before 6 months of age, while others are ready after 6 months. Now, let's take a look at the meal pattern for infants. Infants are divided into 2 categories, 0 through 5 months and 6 through 11 months. Infants 0 through 5 months are easy. For breakfast, lunch, supper, and snack, they require the same component, 4 to 6 fluid ounces of breast milk or formula. Breastfed babies who drink less than the minimum required amount of breast milk may be served less than the minimum, as long as the additional breast milk is offered if the baby will drink more. The meal pattern for infants 6 through 11 months is the same for breakfast, lunch, and supper, and a little different for snack. Let's take a look at what they need for breakfast, lunch, and supper meals. For breakfast, lunch, and supper, infants 6 through 11 months require 6 to 8 fluid ounces of breast milk or formula, and when they're developmentally ready for foods, up to 4 tablespoons of infant cereal, meat, fish, poultry, whole eggs, or cooked dry beans or peas, or up to 2 ounces of cheese, or up to 4 ounces of cottage cheese or yogurt. And the third component is up to 2 tablespoons of vegetables, fruit, or a combination of both. The second component may sound a bit complicated, but it is not. No need to be overwhelmed. These are each choices you can make. And finally, a snack for infants 6 through 11 months requires 2 to 4 fluid ounces of breast milk or formula. And when the infant is developmentally ready for foods, up to a ½ ounce equivalent of bread, or up to a ¼ ounce equivalent of crackers, or up to a ½ ounce equivalent of infant cereal, or up to a ¼ ounce equivalent of ready-to-eat cereal, along with up to 2 tablespoons of vegetables, fruit, or a combination of both. Thank you for taking care of the infants in our communities. By following these meal patterns for infants, we are ensuring our meals are reimbursable and that the babies in our care get the nutrition they need. If you have questions or want to learn more about the CACFP, visit the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction CACFP website.
Another great video on the infant meal pattern. So now I'm just going to go a little bit more just to recap the infant meal pattern. So infants younger than 6 months should be consuming their mother's own milk or formula on demand. We do encourage breastfeeding like they stated, and if the mom does come to provide breast milk, it can be reimbursed, or we do provide breast milk, it can be reimbursable. Any milk not specifically designed for an infant, things like cow's milk, rice milk, soy milk, almond milk, or goat milk, it's not recommended during the first 12 months. It's not something we would be able to do for our infant. How you're going to know that they're ready for solid foods at 6 months, like the video showed, a lot of infants, some can start earlier, some may start later. You want to look for things of them doing this by opening the mouth for the spoon or looking for food, closes the upper and lower lip around the spoon, moves food to the back of the tongue and is able then to swallow it, can sit up without support, has good head control, and uses their whole hand to grasp objects. So, before we serve any food to our infant, we want to make sure that they are ready. Parents may provide one component of the meal to still be compliant. We want to make sure that they try the food first and that they watch for allergies before we are to give that child the same solid food. Breastfed babies fed by mom on site, like I said, are reimbursable. They will count in our meal count. And all parents must complete the accepting and rejecting formula form. Programs that provide food to infants will allow the lead of the family to only serve what has been safely fed to the child at home. Like I said, they'll introduce, say, the peaches first. They've tried it, they hadn't had an allergy, then we're able to do this at the site as well. Babies develop at their own rate. They all should have kind of their own meal and menu plan. They should be eating on demand, and we shouldn't be, forcing each baby at, this time they should be eating. They all have their own agenda. Portion sizes can range because, again, each baby is eating only what is developmentally appropriate for them and on demand. Fortified infant cereal is to be served until age 1, twice a day. And by 1, we really would want most of our infants to be on all or at least majority of solid food. And no juice is to be served to our infants. So just keep that in mind. This is that accepting and rejecting infant formula form that all the parents need to fill out. And we would need to make sure we have a copy of this as well, or save a copy, I should say. This is the infant menu form for our CACFP, and I know a lot of you use something like this to even just plug in your meals. This is a great tool. Also, they have something similar for our older children too, with our serving sizes, and you guys can just use this, plug in what you'd like to be serving. So going back a little bit, since we talked about family style kind of in the beginning, since it's been on hold, but if it ever does return, we want to make sure that all food is set out at the same time, that everyone is seated before we begin meal service. So, making sure all the kids are seated, you yourself is seated, and then we're going to allow the food to be passed around the table, allowing the children to take which food they want, the amount that they want, and of course within limits of, not letting them pile a huge mound on their plate, but letting them serve themselves. Children are also encouraged to eat, but they're not forced. So again, modeling good behaviors, showing them like, oh, I'm going to try the green beans today. I'm not sure if I'm going to like them, but I'm going to try one. Something of that might be encouraging. They do not need to put all the food on their plate. So this is that benefit where, they can eat slowly and they might want to put one food at a time on their plate. And that would be fine. Staff is to now definitely promote eating with that child and, should model these good eating habits. Children are informed of what they're eating. So again, like I kind of said already, but talking to the child, today's the green beans and I don't love green beans and I'm going to try them. Wow, they're really good. And encouraging them, oh, can I try those as well, would be helpful. And it's just nice to also try to create a good conversation, a good environment, having everyone participate and maybe ask questions about the vegetable or the fruit if it's something they hadn't tried before. As we know, there's lots of benefits to eating together. It's such a great way to socialize and feel good, and family style dining is a great way for the child to really learn to make their own decisions, learn to eat and try all different items that they might be put in front of them. They learn how to follow directions. For example, they have to pass something to the left, or if they want to put this behind their plate. They also learn fine motor skills. They can pour, they have to scoop. They learn table manners. They'll have to say please, or so-and-so, can you pass the food? They learn different language that they might have not if they weren't participating in this type of dining service. They learn food safety. You cannot touch all the food, or they can't put their whole hand to grab out the food. They have to use the utensil or a serving spoon. They can't take the spoon and put it to their mouth because that's the spoon for everyone to use. And they also learn to be patient and wait for their food, wait for everyone to serve their food on their plate before they're going to go ahead and eat their food. So how do we gain these skills with no family style meals in place? We can still discuss foods and work on language, manners, and making food decisions just by saying these things to the children as you serve their pre-plated meals. So, oh, today is broccoli. Everyone, let's try our broccoli together. Oh, look, today we have peaches. Who likes peaches here? Things like that can be encouraging. Again, we can still have like a meaningful conversation, or children can still ask questions about the food that they might see on their pre-plated meal. We can still discuss food safety, talk about why we don't want to share food together because of the germs, and why we each have our own plate that we're going to touch. We can learn some skills like pouring and fine motor with creative play and arts and crafts. So that's something you can do away from the mealtime. Or in a pretend kitchen, they can pretend to be pouring water or making or cutting vegetables. We can learn directions with physical activities and games as well. So it's not all bad without family style meal service. However, this is a great component when we are able to finally do this again. So, what's your role in meal service? So your role as a staff member here is to sit with the children at or near the table. It's to, again, try all the foods, encourage the children to try new foods, but don't force them. It's also important to teach table manners. Please, can you pass this? Thank you for giving me my napkin. Things like that are very great for children to hear. You want to ensure food safety. You want to show, okay, let's all wash your hands before we go sit down. You want to show that you're wearing gloves when you're doing meal service. You want to encourage meaningful conversation between children or between yourself and the child. And you want to allow adequate time to eat, 20 minutes for breakfast and snack and 30 minutes for lunch, allowing each child to go at their own pace, be able to eat slowly if they'd like, and sit and have a conversation with you or with the other children if they'd like. You want to remember that during this time, you need to take the meal count during meal service. And this is important because, one, you can easily forget who was at the meal, but you really want to make sure you keep good track of it so that you get reimbursed. Children must either place food on their plate or eat a bite of food or sip of milk in order to be counted in the meal. So if a child refusing to eat, refusing to do anything, they are not going to be able to be counted in this meal service. Again, it's important one good tip is to kind of have your meal count with you ready or readily available for you to complete. So whether you're doing this kind of as your kids are sitting down or right after, or even if it's somewhere right next to you where you're able then to count and make sure you document who was at the meal. You also want to have one child remind you to take the meal count as his job for the day. And that's a suggestion, but sometimes the day gets busy. So maybe, today is so-and-so's turn. to remind myself that I need to do the meal count. And it also shows them to participate and to help and keep track of this as well. So here's our meal count sheet, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. And this is a great place where you'll document. I did want to point out that others, you can use that for if you'd like to count, say, like a parent toward the meal, if they had popped in to eat lunch with the child. I don't know how many people are doing this now with COVID, but in the past, I know that that was allowed. So that's where you might say you had a visitor come to eat with the children. And they could be included in the meal count for that day. All right, so now we're going to get into food safety. So it's really important at all of our sites that we make sure we keep our children as safe as possible. So food safety is one of our most important things that we will do all day. We want to make sure that we follow all our food safety guidelines. This includes before, during, and after the meal service. We always want to make sure we're washing our hands prior to serving a meal as well as after the meal is completed. Always wearing our gloves when applicable. We want to make sure we properly clean, sanitize all our tables, our toys, our bottles, our nipples, anything that would be used to prepare food should all be cleaned. Children are encouraged to help with meal service, but because of COVID, right now it's a better time that they do not. But in the future, if we ever get back to this, children should also be encouraged to participate in food safety. Food safety in infants, staff to wash hands before and after feeding the infant. You want to avoid any type of choking hazard with infants, like these foods you see in this picture. You want to also make sure that the bottles we have, they're either in a bottle warmer heated or in a crock pot. Never use a microwave. Bottles are not finished. They must be fed to the infant within 1 hour. And if not, if they weren't unfinished, then they must be discarded and then washed properly. No food is fed directly from a jar. No two foods are mixed together. And the reason for the no two foods mixed together is just in case of any type of allergy that we may not know of. We want to be careful and we want to make sure we only serve one food at a time to our infants. Children are always within arm's reach of a staff member when feeding. This is just in case any type of choking may occur. You want to make sure you are close by to that child. So of course, we're going to get into washing our hands a little more and how important washing your hands is. So step 1, you want to remember to wet your hands. Step 2, you want to apply soap. Step 3, you want to scrub for at least 20 seconds. Step 4, you want to rinse. Step 5, you want to dry. And step 6, you want to turn off the water. But when you do this, you want to turn the water off with your paper towel. And that is because you had turned on the water before your hands were clean. So remember to shut off the water with a paper towel. Washing hands with soap and water is the best way to get rid of germs in most situations. If soap and water for some reason are not readily available, you can use alcohol-based hand sanitizer, but it must contain at least 60% alcohol. And this is a little demonstration on how to use hand sanitizer. I know, however, most of you are able to have access to soap and water, but I just wanted to throw this in there since with COVID and just the way of the world now, I do feel like hand sanitizer is always on everyone's mind. and you always probably have it in your car, your pocketbook, wherever you may be. So if you do have hand sanitizer in your area, this is something just to remember and how to sanitize your hands properly. So I have two videos on hand washing and sanitizing. So let's get into those now.
In the mid-1800s, the Hungarian Dr. Ignaz Semmelweis theorized that hand washing, or hand disinfection as he called it, reduced mortality rates significantly. The surprise? Not many believed him. His ideas were rejected by the then medical community. Times have changed. Now we know that keeping hands clean through proper hand washing is one of the most important steps we can take. Clean hands helps to avoid getting sick and to stop the spread of germs to others. Make sure you are not only washing hands, but washing hands properly. The first step is to wet your hands with clean, warm running water. Add liquid soap and rub hands together vigorously until lather appears. Wash wrists, palms, back of hands, fingers, and fingernails. Think about how many germs can reside under jewelry and long or artificial nails. Wash hands for at least 20 seconds. Need a timer? A good idea is to sing or hum the happy birthday song twice. The next step is to rinse hands thoroughly under warm running water. Now, dry hands with a clean paper towel. Use the paper towel to turn off the water taps. By following these proper hand washing steps, you are supporting very important health and safety practices in childcare and school. So, when should we wash hands? A lot. When arriving for the day or when moving from one group of children to another. Wash hands before and after eating, handling food, feeding a child, administering medication, and when using sensory play such as sand and water play. Always wash hands after diapering, toileting, handling bodily fluids, wiping noses, mouths, or cuts. Wash hands also after handling animals in animal cages or handling garbage. Now that you have reviewed how to properly wash your hands, you will be better able to encourage and to teach children the same, how to properly wash their hands. Keeping hands clean through proper hand washing is one of the most important steps we can take to avoid getting sick and spreading germs to others. A great, healthy practice.
All right, so that was just a little recap on how to wash hands. And now we're going to go into safe and sanitary ways to serve food. So this is another great video that I think you guys will enjoy.
Serving food. First, think about the sink that you have available to you. If it is a sink that is your kitchen sink or a sink that's never used for toileting or diapering, it's considered clean. However, if you have a classroom that has shared purpose for the sink, meaning you're diapering in that classroom, toileting in that classroom, and you're having to prepare food or serve food, then it is considered something that might be an unclean sink. So you need to make it clean before you do anything with food. And to do that, you would need to disinfect your sink. So after you either have a sink that is not used for toileting and diapering and is already considered clean, or if you do have a sink that has other purposes and you have disinfected it, then you can move on to the second step, which is sanitizing your food surfaces. So just making sure that anything that you're going to be using for your food preparation or your food service is sanitized. Then the next step would be to make sure that you wash your hands. And washing your hands at a clean sink. and making sure that that's done, like I said, either in the kitchen or the sink that's been disinfected, not in the bathroom sink. Because we do not want you touching food with your bare hands, you need to pick a barrier. You have several to choose from. The barriers, when I talk about it, are utensils, so meaning a spoon. You can use a scoop or a measuring cup, tongs, or you can use gloves. So some type of barrier that you would select so that, like I said, your bare hands are not touching food. The next thing to think about is keeping your barrier sanitary. So what I mean by that is either keeping it in the serving bowl at all times or on the serving platter, or if you can't do that or don't choose to do that, then you would place the utensil or the barrier on a clean space, either provided with a clean paper towel, so I could lay my items here to keep them more sanitary. The other choice you could use would be a clean plate. You could put that there, or in a clean bowl, just somewhere that you can always keep your utensils more sanitary. Typically, programs use food service gloves, and which is great. However, other programs sometimes use other types of gloves, and other types of gloves would be vinyl, which I have here, or some programs also may use latex gloves. Just note that latex would be something that you want to make sure no one has an allergy to latex, especially if they have powder inside, then that is another place that has even more latex and could get on your food or on the surfaces that you're preparing food. So those would not be recommended to use. But you could use vinyl, powder-free though, once again, just so that you're not getting that powder anywhere. So vinyl or food service gloves. Another thing I see are people using their food service gloves or the gloves used for food service to be touching the outside of containers such as ketchup or bottles of syrup, the outside of serving bowls, the outside of bags of food, plastic bags, and that's not recommended because those surfaces have been touched by other people and therefore can contaminate the surface of the gloves. So if I were to be serving buns, then I would not need gloves on at this time. I'm rearranging the bag, I'm touching the bag, and then, like I said before, we don't know where this bag has been. So I would undo the twist tie and open the bag. And so they're easily able to get out of the bag, and therefore I can either take a tongs and I can get out the bun and give that to a child or put it on a serving platter or something. The other choice would be that I could take and put my gloves on, and then that's when I would directly touch the buns with my gloved hands. If I was making barbecues, I could put the hamburger on the buns and then put that on my serving tray. And once I've done that, then this is when I remove my gloves and take those off and throw them away now that I'm done touching food. Once you take the gloves off, you need to throw them away, and you need to have a fresh or clean pair of gloves each time you need to go make another piece of toast or to do something else dealing with food. Next, I want you to think about things if you're going to be cutting food. So if you're going to be cutting food, first of all, is it a fresh fruit or vegetable? If it is, such as a banana, then what is recommended is for you to rinse that in cold water in a clean sink to remove those contaminants, to try to get off all the chemicals or the contaminants on there before you would give that to a child. Just because they would be touching the peeling and then therefore they could get that in their hands. Or even if you cut with your knife through it, then you're introducing all those germs or the chemicals onto the fruit that they are eating. So that's why it's important to wash all fresh fruits and vegetables before you serve them to children. So in this case, if I was serving it to an older child, then I would wash it off, but then I could give them a whole banana, or I could cut it in half and give them half a banana for them to also learn the self-help skills of getting the peeling off. But if I was serving that to an infant or toddler, then that's different. I'm going to need to cut it up, so I'm going to need to remove the peeling. So when you would do that, is that what I would need is somewhere to place the banana, either on a plate is a great place, or you could use a clean paper towel as well. But whatever cutting utensils you're using, please remember that's a safety hazard, and you want to make sure that those are always out of the reach of children so that they can't be harmed by them. So then let's go back to taking the peeling off. So in this case, I would not need to wash the banana because I'm taking the peeling off anyway. So in that case, obviously, I peel the banana and try just not to try to do this in the most sanitary way you can. Getting the peeling off and dropping that onto the plate surface. And then I could dispose of the peeling into the garbage. And then I would go wash my hands because I would have that contaminant on my hands, so I'll go wash my hands. Okay, I've washed my hands, so now I can put my food service gloves on. So I'm not touching the food directly. And then this is where I can handle the banana here. And with bananas or anything round, it's just really important to make sure that you do make sure it's not in a round piece. We always want to cut up food, so 1/2 inch for toddlers, 1/4 inch for infants. But you also, like I said, you want to make sure if it's round, even though it might be cut up in pieces in that diameter, it still would be round and they could choke on it. So you just want to make sure that you cut it so that it's lengthwise. And you can do that on your plate here. And then this is where I could pick it up, and I either can, keep continuing onto the plate itself to cut it if you want to do it that way, or if you want to put it in a serving bowl, this would be a time that's easy to do. And then you just want to cut the pieces right into the serving bowl. And then after you've done your cutting, then you want to take off your gloves. You don't need these on anymore. I'm not directly touching food. And then I would throw those away in my garbage. And then the other thing to remember is if you do have them in a bowl, or you have prepared this and you're not going to eat them right away or have children eat them right away, then it's just recommended to cover them. And you can use a paper towel, you can use tin foil, you can use plastic wrap. And the reason for covering it, obviously, is to keep it more sanitary, just from little fingers going into it and checking it out. If people cough or sneeze, then that is keeping those germs from getting onto the food. And it's really important, so if it's even on the countertop, you would cover it. If it's on the table, keep it covered when you're not using it. And also, if you prepare it in your kitchen and you're transporting it to another classroom, that's another time that's very important for you to keep it covered. Okay, so when it's time to serve, I can take my serving spoon and I can lift up the corner here and get out the bananas that I need and place those in a serving bowl and give those to the child. And then I can return either the spoon to my clean surface, or I can put it over here in the serving bowl and recover it until I need it next.
All right, that was a great way to safely and sanitary way to serve food to our kids. So I thought that was a great video to show you guys. So just to remember for wearing gloves the right way. 1, you want to make sure you wear food service gloves, or like she had said, using the other type of glove, or you want to use sanitary utensils or deli tissues when handling ready to eat food. You always want to wash your hands before you put on your gloves. And again, change your gloves anytime you would need to wash your hands, or if you're changing tasks. Some things to think about are after you're touching your body, using the toilet, drinking or eating, handling dirty dishes or equipment, or handling raw food. These are times you would want to change your gloves. Any other activities that contaminate your gloves as well. And remember, when you remove your gloves, you want to take them off so that they fold up with the dirty side inside out. And then you'll wash your hands after you remove your gloves. So now I have a quick video on cleaning and sanitizing that I'd like you guys to watch as well.
Proper cleaning and sanitizing are important when it comes to keeping food safe. All surfaces that come in contact with food, such as tabletops, cutting boards, knives, and other equipment and utensils, must be cleaned and sanitized after use. Cleaning removes removes physical soils, such as food particles and oily residue. Sanitizing reduces the amount of bacteria or germs on a surface to safe levels. A food surface must be cleaned before it can be correctly sanitized. A dirty surface cannot be sanitized. First, prior to washing, large food particles must be removed from the surface through soaking, scraping, or scrubbing. Then the surface must be cleaned or washed in detergent or water. Water temperature should be 110 degrees Fahrenheit with the appropriate concentration of detergent. After cleaning, the surface is rinsed using clean, potable water. The goal is to remove all remaining detergent. Once the surface is rinsed, it can now be sanitized. Common sanitizers include chlorine bleach and quaternary ammonia compounds, or quats. To use chlorine bleach as a sanitizer, it must be first diluted to the appropriate concentration, which is less than 100 parts per million. Using regular strength bleach, which is 5.25 to 6% sodium hypochlorite, mix 1 teaspoon per quart of water or 1 tablespoon per gallon of water. It is important to make sure the bleach can be used in food applications and that it is unscented. Be sure to use measuring spoons and a measuring cup. Don't just eyeball the amounts. This is a very precise ratio that must be followed closely. Too much or too little chlorine means that the item or surface will not be properly sanitized. It is also important to check the final concentration of the solution with a test strip. Water quality, including hardness and pH, can affect the final concentration. When using this solution in bottles, it is important to remember that solution will only remain active for 24 hours. Therefore, only mix an amount that can be used for not longer than 1 day. Discard any chlorine bleach solution that is older than 1 day. You can apply this solution with a spray bottle or use a clean cloth to wipe surfaces. If you use a bottle, be sure to label the contents. When using wiping cloths, be sure to store those cloths in a pail of sanitizing solution between uses. After the sanitizing solution is applied, allow the surface to air dry. This will provide time for the sanitizer to do its job. Never wipe dry a surface. This may reintroduce contaminants. When using quaternary ammonia or other chemical sanitizers, it is important to follow manufacturer's instruction. And remember, food surfaces must first be cleaned and rinsed before they can be sanitized.
All right, guys, thank you for watching that video on cleaning and sanitizing. So now we're gonna go ahead and get into the top 8 food allergens that we wanna try to keep our children safe. So the most common food allergens is milk, eggs, fish, shellfish, tree nuts, peanuts, wheat, and soy. Many children have food allergies and need their menus to be modified. This can be very challenging for you and the caterer to do, and that's also where I'll come in to help you to suggest other alternatives if needed. Try to keep modifications consistent if possible between diet types. So an example of this would be if you need to eliminate pancakes, because on this day you have someone, at the center that would be milk-free diet, then the same substitution could also be used for an egg-free diet. It just makes it less complicated. We don't have to have multiple things being made for these different allergies. Always check labels of the food if you know the allergens are in them, and instruct your cooking staff to do the same. So if you know you have a child that's allergic, pay special attention to some of the food that's mixed or any reading food labels, just to be sure that there's no contaminating in the child's food. You also want to check with your school and or parent to know exactly what must be modified for the child in order, again, to keep our children safe. That's again our #1 goal. I know many of you are EpiPen trained, so you'll have this in your background. But of course, we never want to have that happen if we can easily prevent it. So prepping food for someone with food allergens, 4 easy steps. Just to read all your ingredient labels, make sure to wash your hands, can't stress that enough. Prepare food on clean surfaces, and use clean and separate utensils and cookware from maybe even altogether from whoever has the allergy kind of has their own separate area. So again, thinking about those top 8 food allergens, keeping those in mind when cooking and reading labels. So parents may choose to ask for a religious exemption for certain foods. They may want to fill out the medical statement form for their child if there's any type of allergy. It is required for them to do this in order for us to provide a different menu. So we must again have documentation of this. The medical statement, this must indicate what the child cannot eat, what to substitute for this. If there's any particular concern, is that we make sure we get adequate information from the physician. There is no medical statement for Lactaid to be substituted for milk only. So just to keep that in mind. I know a lot of parents want to use some alternate milks. So we do want to remember that we will need medical, documentation. The only milks that we are credible for are Lactaid and soy. So if a mom wants to use something different, then we would need documentation. However, we have to remember that if they want to use almond milk, that's not technically something we can serve because we may have we are facilities that may be nut free. So if we want to use something different, then we need that documentation. And if a child is allergic to both milk and soy, that you may petition the state to allow that child to consume rice or oat milk as an alternative. And like I mentioned already about almond milk, you do want to be careful since a lot of us are nut free. So this is that medical statement form that you would need the parent to fill out, and again, keep this documentation for whichever child has a food allergy in your program. So now moving on to some CACFP facts. We know that Child and Adult Care Food Program stands for CACFP. This program is sponsored by the USDA and in the state of Connecticut by the State Department of Education. We know we can serve up to 3 meals per day and or snack per day. So you can serve breakfast and lunch and a PM snack, which I know most of you do. We typically aren't serving suppers. Portions are age appropriate, like we went over way in the beginning. They're all certain portion sizes for each specific age group. All of our menus are written and then approved by myself, the registered dietitian, and they follow the CACFP meal pattern and guidelines. Meals are well balanced. They're low in sugar, salt, and fat, and high in nutrients, dense, rich foods. We don't like to have any fried foods. That's really not good for the kids. We're trying to promote, again, good eating habits and allowing them to try healthy options. The NIAC recommends the meals be spaced between 2 to 3 hours, and this is because our children have small stomachs. Typically, they're not going to be able to just consume, a huge meal and wait longer than 3 hours. So that's why our meals should be served in this frequency. So our last video, I have a lot of videos for you guys. Our last one is on the civil rights video. So let's see if we can go ahead and open this for you guys.
are civil rights laws dating back to the Civil Rights Act of 1964.
Its purpose is to promote a more abiding commitment to freedom, a more constant pursuit of justice, and a deeper respect for human dignity.
Guarantee equal protection for all citizens, regardless of race, national origin, sex, disability, age, or religion. In this short training, you'll learn how to appropriately follow these laws so that the integrity and rights of families served in your child and adult care food program are protected. We'll cover a variety of steps and strategies to ensure your CACFP site represents equal opportunity and justice for all, including collecting data, notifying the public of the program and equal access, accommodating all participants regardless of disability or other barriers like limited English proficiency, and responding to and resolving civil rights complaints and violations. Let's start with collecting and using data. With the help of your enrollment documentation, you'll need to record who all is participating in your program, completing the Race and Ethnicity Beneficiary Data Form annually. Nutrition programs remain fair and equal by recording the race and ethnicity of participants. These reports are then cross-checked with your local school district's racial census report to verify that the community is being served openly and honestly. Racial and ethnic data can be collected from information entered by the parent or guardian on the enrollment form. If it's missing or unclear, don't be afraid to ask the parents or guardians to self-identify in a respectful way. It can also be collected by you or a staff member through visual observation of the child. Next, let's talk about notifying all participants. Each feeding site must post an Injustice for All poster in a public space, such as the parent board or administrative office. This lets people know you're serving meals and will protect their rights. It's also important that any documents distributed to the public that mention CACFP contain the full non-discrimination statement to let folks know this institution is an equal opportunity provider. If you mention your participation in CACFP on your website, the full non-discrimination statement is required as well. The full non-discrimination statement can go anywhere on your materials as long as it's not the smallest print on the page. It is not required on your menus. It all comes down to equal opportunity and justice for all. These statements summarize a commitment to civil rights in a concise and consistent way. Now, let's talk accommodation. It's important to have a plan for participants who may not speak English as their primary language or who have limited English proficiency. If you know your community has families with limited English proficiency, try to recruit volunteers that speak other common languages. Be sure to have any information like menus and operating hours in multiple languages as needed. MDE CACFP can assist you to obtain program information to accommodate other languages. To find out more about which languages are spoken in your community and how you can accommodate families that speak them, visit lep.gov. Overall, if you treat LEP speakers the same way you would a native English speaker, you're doing the right thing. Your program success depends on how well you accommodate a family's need. Individuals with disabilities are welcomed and encouraged to attend CACFP programs. An equal effort must be made to accommodate any other disabilities encountered, from food allergies to physical disabilities. Remember, equal opportunity and justice for all. Remember the golden rule? Treat others as you would like to be treated. From a customer service perspective, this can be interpreted as treat others the way they want to be treated, or at least be aware what that is. Treating others with respect is the best customer service and helps avoid and address conflict. The disparate treatment of program participants is a direct violation of one's civil rights. However, even when you are doing your best to protect against intentional discrimination, disparate impact might occur. Disparate impact or unintentional discrimination occurs when a rule or procedure causes a certain group to be treated unequally. Any type of discrimination, intentional or unintentional, could result in a civil rights complaint. Everyone has the right to file a complaint if they feel they've been treated unequally, despite your best efforts to protect their civil rights. All complaints must be reported and resolved, no matter the form of grievance. If a participant approaches you or a staff member with a complaint, try to discuss and resolve the issue by explaining your commitment to equal opportunity and justice for all. If that doesn't work, the Injustice for All poster lists the steps they can take to file a complaint with the USDA. Be sure to contact your sponsor, if applicable, or your state agency, the Michigan Department of Education, right away in the event of a complaint. MDE will be able to assist you. Ultimately, things will be resolved by the USDA and your state agency. If a civil rights violation occurs at your program, or even if it doesn't, you may receive some official visitors from the state or from the USDA. They are there to ensure civil rights requirements are being followed. These official visitors will review the civil rights practices at your program and will recommend corrective actions if anything is being done incorrectly. If you do receive a corrective action, don't panic. You'll be given time and support to implement a solution. If you choose not to resolve an identified violation, you will no longer be able to serve meals. We've talked about a lot today. Collecting racial and ethnic information from your participants to ensure the entire community has access and is being served. Notifying the public so everyone in the community is equally informed about the benefits of your nutrition program. Accommodating all participants regardless of disability or other barriers like limited English proficiency. And responding to and resolving civil rights complaints and violations appropriately. All these steps and strategies will lead to a general protection of civil rights at your site. But remember, life happens in the gray area. You might encounter situations you're not sure how to deal with, and in those situations, it will be important to remember civil rights is about equal opportunity, access, and justice for all. Your participants are your customers. Treat them the way you want to be treated and accommodate them to the best of your ability. In the face of conflict, try to remain calm and call upon your sponsor or MDE for support in resolving disputes. Good luck! You have a tremendous opportunity to serve your community and be an example of equal opportunity and justice for all.
So as the civil rights video had talked about a couple of these topics that I just want to highlight, which I think this video was also a really great way, instead of me just reading a slide, to inform you about your civil rights. But one thing I want to highlight, and most important, is the resolution of compliance. So you really need to remember that if something is to happen, then you do need to develop a corrective action plan in order to fix this. And another thing, the requirements for language assistance as well is food allergy is considered to be a disability in our program. So that's obviously other programs may not consider food allergies as a disability. However, we do consider that as a disability. So I just wanted to highlight those two things from the video. So the State Department of Education will do a program monitoring every 3 years. We want to make sure that, you know, we are documenting, we are monitoring, we are taking our meal counts all the time so that we don't have to worry when the State Department of Education comes to check and does its monitoring. What they are specifically looking for: correctively completed income eligibility forms. These are forms that your parents will fill out each year, and that will tell us their income so that we're able then to determine if we can get reimbursed for the meals for that child. Correctiveness of menus or menu records. So of course we want to keep our menu records over these years. We want to show that if we were serving peas, but we decided we didn't have peas on this day for whatever reason, and we decided to put carrots. We want to cross peas off and put carrots in place of that. And then we would want to save that menu and maintain that menu so we know, you know, that day when we didn't serve peas, we did give an alternate vegetable. We want to make sure that we have the posting for our Justice for All on in our buildings. If we have multiple buildings, we want multiple posters. And we also want to have the Building for the Future poster in our centers. We want to make sure we have contract with our vendor or our food service invoices and inventory. We want to make sure that, you know, we have everything again filed and in an easy place if someone were to ask for it. I know a lot of you guys do your own cooking, so you want to make sure that you maintain all your invoices, your inventory, so that you have proof of what you purchased on that so-and-so month or date. And you have that information to show that you did purchase enough food for your children that you're serving. You want to make sure you have completed racial and ethnic forms. You want to make sure documentation of our annual training, this training we do, this 2-hour training for CACFP is documented. You want to make sure that your meal counts and attendance sheets are recorded and maintained. You want to make sure that they're matching, that they show that, you know, we do get monthly reimbursement claims for however many children we have. And we want to make sure that our meal monitoring is completed for multiple centers if we have multiple centers. We want to make sure that 3 times a year we are doing monitoring and reviewing our meal counts and food safety, so that again, when they come, that we're doing this correct all the time and we don't have to worry. Usually these visits, the meal monitoring, should be unannounced, so try to make that a priority if possible for us to, you know, be able to see what goes on during our yearly and daily meal counts. So now we'll just get into these 2 posters here that I know you guys have posted. Again, if you have multiple buildings, you want to make sure that these both are posted in each of the buildings on your sites. For our monitoring form, we want to make sure that these are also filled out. If there's any issue for remonitoring, then we would want to do that within 30 days. And it's always good when you're going ahead and monitoring your services. This is a chance to have a learning opportunity to follow up on whatever you might have seen that was not served or was not done correctly, so that it is a learning experience. And then also we are able to show this, that we have trained staff and we know what we're doing for our children. So in summary, we want to remember that we are feeding children nutritious food. It's important for development, and really we're, you know, building blocks to their future eating habits. We learned a lot about grains and ounce equivalents and how that should be represented on the menu. We looked into food safety and how it's always important, even more so during COVID. Of course, we always want to be refreshed on the proper hand washing technique and glove use and when that should be done. We want to always make sure we follow our portion size for good nutrition to help prevent obesity, and we want our portion sizes on our menus for our children. We want to follow the CACFP meal patterns, and that goes for infants as well. We want to take special care to serving food to our children that have food allergies and really promoting to our staff how important this is to take food allergies seriously. And as a USDA sponsored program, we are required to be an equal opportunity provider and to follow the civil rights guidelines and to make sure that we are treating everyone equally in our programs. And lastly, I just want to say that we want to just, again, be, very intuitive into keeping our children safe and to providing them nutritious meals, as well as, showing them how to consume nutritious meals and doing these things for themselves and developing their skills. So I have some resources here that you can go ahead and click on or put into your browser to find more information. If you guys need any other information, please feel free to always reach out to me. Thank you very much for your time. Hope you enjoyed the CACFP training. I'm always here if you guys need anything. So thank you.